Welcome to the Virtual Reality Podcast. This is Craig Herndon, and I'm here at VRX 2019 with Lorenzo Vallone from Xennial Digital. Lorenzo, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate the time. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, and so why don't you go ahead and just jump right into telling us about Xennial Digital and kind of what you've done in the education space, because that's your main focus.
Sure. So Xennial Digital is an XR specialist. We're based in Miami, Florida, and we have teams throughout Latin America. We have been passionate about the education space for well over 6.5 years. Worked in the education technology space on some cutting-edge products around mobile learning and interactive learning. In the last 2.5 years, we have shifted our focus to this amazing power that extended reality brings to education, and the ability to use that as a technology, as a platform to transform how kids learn and the effectiveness of learning in general. We started working with private schools about 2.5 years ago when we entered down this path. And we asked one of the schools in Broward County, Florida, St. Thomas Aquinas, well-established private school, if they would be interested in doing a pilot with us in virtual reality. And they said yes. So we brought in our first prototype, which was a human heart. And we put the headset on Father Kelly, who's 85 years old and just a spectacular person.
And was this a Vive or
this was a Vive?
Okay.
We put the full Vive on his head, and we brought him on a quick tour of the human heart. And within seconds, he took the headset off and said, "I want to do this with all of my content." And he assigned some amazing teachers from the school to work with us to start building the content. And so as a result of that, we were able to develop a library, which is a combination of both a core platform for education, but also a really rich library of content. We have 13 experiences today, but we continue to build more and populate the portal with that. And the experiences are all around the immersion into science. It's about education and learning and certainly measurable results. We understand, obviously, those are super important.
So they're all STEM experiences.
All STEM experiences focused on biology, chemistry, physics, anatomy. And beyond just being educational, what we're trying to do and what we've been successful at doing is really getting kids excited about science.
Yep. And so like just looking at formulas, it's hard to abstract those and kind of understand what they actually mean or how they interact with the world. But your experiences kind of take those and then allow them to visualize them and play around with the numbers and then see what happens in real time. Like one of them where you're shooting someone out of a cannon to learn on how the projectile motion and kind of the ellipsis that happens through that formula.
Yeah, we've focused on that, and that's actually been one of the most fun and amazing parts of the experience is that we have been able to work with the teachers, and now we're working with students as well in a really collaborative fashion, where the students are actually part of that development process. They're part of our product development team, and this sort of happened by chance that we started down this new path of actually having the students.
Yeah. So
involved.
How did you get to a point where you did get the students involved?
So when we first launched the portal at St. Thomas and a few other private schools, we were visiting the schools on a regular basis. And one day, and I'll never forget this because it really impacted me when I saw it, they had set up a lab at the school. They had 2 large screens with 2 HTC Vives, and so that they could have 2 students in different experiences at the same time. And I walked in, and there were 2 10th grade students that were in the lab. And I noticed that they were in an experience that we had not published to the portal yet. This was a beta experience around molecular biology and creating molecules from atoms, but it was not built fully. And as I walked up to the screens to sort of see what they were doing, I noticed that they were both in the experience together. We have a multiplayer, multi-learner function within our portal, and they were both in there together. And I thought, well, that's interesting. We haven't even released this feature yet, and these kids are already using it. And what shocked me next was that I realized there were other voices in there. And momentarily, the kids turned and were looking at 3 other avatars that were in the experience with them. 2 of them were our senior developers and creatives from our team in Bogota, Colombia. And one of them was our project manager in Miami, Florida. And they were in there together discussing the experience that they were building, correcting errors, identifying new ideas. And the kids were driving this conversation. And we were the ones that were listening and learning from them. And everything in my body just lit up. I mean, I sort of saw the future of learning and learning content design in a completely different way. These are my clients. We come from the corporate world.
Yep.
We were part of WBP for 14 years. We have digital marketing backgrounds. We don't come from the education field.
Yep.
But what I saw there was that we had just identified an enormous pool of talent that's just latent, waiting there for opportunities to work. And so what we did with that is we formalized the program. We were fortunate enough to meet two incredible teachers in the Morris Plains, New Jersey area. And they agreed right away to do a pilot project with us, which was to take a group of 10 kids from interdisciplinary backgrounds. We wanted creatives, we wanted project managers, we wanted somebody who knew a little bit about tech, but we didn't just want the kids that already know how to code. That's not what this is about.
Yep.
And we said, let's organize this group together. Let's build a new experience together in 12 weeks. And so with that time box, we wrapped ourselves around the school and the teacher and the students. They became our product designers. We were just the ones implementing and building as we went along and guiding with our knowledge of how to do these things on a professional scale. These kids have risen to the challenge in the most amazing way possible. This is an after-school program that they do voluntarily, the teachers and the students. And what's happening with them as we go through that is they're not becoming coders. They're becoming product developers, which is probably, if we think about the future of AI and IoT and robotics and VR, one of the most future-proof jobs that we'll have are product designers. These are people who think with a different mindset. They know creative, they know business process, they know tech, they know it all. And so what I noticed with these kids is that they were collaborating with one another, feeding on each other's strengths, and the teachers were amazing at guiding them down this path. We're about halfway through that program, and the results have been amazing. So with that learned, we started a new project at a magnet school in Miami-Dade. We're working on biology curriculum with a group of kids who, this is a school that is an amazingly well-run school in a very disadvantaged part of town. And these kids have never had this chance to be part of a professional product development before.
Right. And what age group?
9th and 10th graders.
Wow. Yeah. And most kids haven't even considered anything beyond school or hang out with friends at that age.
Well, look, right? There are a lot of great after-school programs. Don't get me. There's a ton of them, right? Go play sports, go do music, go create art, right? But this is just another pathway that is a really interesting intersection of the commercial world and our needs as a business, right? We want to grow this portal so we can make it more valuable for our community of users. And the need of students and teachers to have opportunities to work this way. And it's truly a future of work opportunity, because what we're doing is we're creating a pipeline of product designers and developers who will then go to college and move on and do amazing things in the companies and organizations that they end up working for. So we replicated it in Miami at this amazing school. From day one, we just kicked off the project a week ago. On the first day of kickoff, we asked these kids, tell me something that you love about biology. Like, what do you love? And I really put them on the spot. They're in front of their teacher. I had, senior program director there, myself there. And these kids just opened up. And one of them was about the love of the cell, the human cell, and how amazing of an engine it is. And another child talked about the tree of life and how incredible that is, that we've expanded and changed and evolved over all these years. And then other kids had ideas about space, DNA. If we can capture and harness that talent, that creative vision in what we produce, then what we're giving to our customers, which are the students, of course the teachers too, but the students ultimately are the consumers, is something that comes from them. And so that's been something that's been really inspiring and really amazing.
Curiosity and how do you get that into a product, or that drive to learn?
Right. And that's hard. I mean, that's a hard job. We live with that every day. It's a tough job to actually take a concept like sonar and turn it into an experience that's both amazingly fun, incredibly immersive, and also highly educational.
Yep. And like you have a Doppler effect.
We have a Doppler effect that's actually a train station where you control a train that's traveling from 60 to 300 miles an hour, and you change the frequency, and the formulas are all on the board. And kids will spend 40 minutes in there just tweaking the angles and seeing how that train changes and how the sound changes and how the waves of from the train, because we visualize the Doppler as waves, are emitted. It's amazing. Wow. In the Bat Cave, it's to learn sonar and echolocation. So students step in this sort of dark Bat Cave. We try not to gamify things too much. Mm-hmm. We really want to make it acceptable to anybody. Any child that's comfortable wearing a VR headset can do these experiences. But in the Bat Cave, what we do is we have basically bats flying around. Mm-hmm. And you have an infrared view, you have a flashlight that you can look around and see the structure of the cave, and you have these bats flying around and you hear them and you see them. You can almost feel them when they fly by you. You could almost feel the wings batting and that sense of rush of air. It's that immersive. And in the process, what it does is it just triggers the curiosity of the kids. So this is not just about teaching one concept of biology or science. This is about getting a child to understand where bats live, how they fly around, what sonar is. So it's this intersection of multiple fields and domains. And that's the challenging part to what we do. These kids that we work with and the teachers that we work with are the engine and the idea core behind how to visualize these complex things. So when we do the human cell, for example, the human cell will probably be an experience. I might have an idea in my head, and our product designer has an idea in her head. But I am sure that the idea that we eventually come to, that we all say, yes, that's the way to do it, is going to be something completely different and truly magical.
Right, because you have their input. And so this program is how you're developing this library of content with students as product developers that you're then licensing out to other schools to use in their curriculum, correct?
Yes, we make the content available through our portal. We are really trying everything we can to keep the price point as low as we can. We want everybody to get it. And when we first launched, we as a organization, as a business, we have 3 core areas of focus. Obviously, education is not just a focus from a business perspective; it's a passion of ours. We've also, just because of our DNA, there's a social impact element to what we do. So we both work with nonprofits to do really interesting visualizations and experiences using extended reality, virtual augmented reality.
Right. And then in the AR space, like you've been working with Magic Leap, where you're selected as one of the 30 of over 7,000 applications to create something that goes along with that library that you're developing. So can you tell me more about the climate change visualization you're doing for Magic Leap?
Absolutely. Yeah. First of all, we were super, super honored and thrilled to have received one of the awards. I mean, it really, to be honest, was unexpected, and yet we were immensely grateful. And Magic Leap has been just an incredible partner to work with in terms of engineering and development and support. What we envisioned with the project was a way to visualize climate change at a macro level. A lot of work's been done using extended reality and climate change, including the work out of Stanford on ocean acidification, which won a ton of awards and is really an amazing experience. What we wanted to do was take a macro view of it. So we partnered with the University of Miami to collect a gigantic data set, which was then curated by UM's data scientists, of all of the data, the predictive data over the next 70 years of how various predictions, there's 5 different levels of predictions, how those predictions could map out in terms of areas around sea level rise, heat waves, ice melt, etc. And so what we did is we basically, in the experience, you have a globe that's floating above you and around you, and you're able to map these projections and visualize them as the Earth is changing over the 70 years. So it actually plays and you can see the effect over time. And then you can change the factors that you're interested in studying. And in addition to that, we built this really sort of fun, friendly robot that flies around and helps you understand what you're looking at, because it's complicated data, but at a core basic point, this is about the future of human life. And so for us, this was not just an amazing project to do with Magic Leap, but for us, we want to see this really grow and hopefully continue to be developed, if not by us, by another group, and to see this carry forward throughout the world, because we really think that it's important for students to visualize what's happening. And there's just no better tool than something like a Magic Leap or really virtual reality in terms of being able to understand the impact and really see its effect.
So like your DNA here is all around social impact. So last year you won an award for one of the most innovative companies by the La Prensa newspaper in Guatemala. So what was that award for, and what project was that around? Because if I'm right, this one wasn't particularly just kids, but it was around educating people and giving them opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have.
The first project that we did when we launched the platform was we donated the hardware and our library through a nonprofit in Guatemala. My business partner, Douglas Fajardo, and CEO of the company, is from Guatemala and has had a very fortunate life in the United States, but really loves his country and really wanted to give back. And so, of course, we said, yeah, let's do this. We worked with Fonsepa, which is a nonprofit in Guatemala that's bringing technology, internet connectivity to rural schools throughout the country. And we offered them hardware and software. They, of course, took us up on it. And we were able to actually go down there and film the experience of delivering this hardware to the school and to see its impact on the students. And as part of that filming, we followed a student who on a daily basis walks down a dirt path for half an hour to reach a bus for an hour ride to a school that is a one large brick building, as many are in these rural areas. And when he walks in this time, there's a screen on the wall. There's an HTC Vive loaded with a laptop and the sensors. And with his teacher, he and his students are now exploring things they've just never seen before. And the transformation was just incredible. These kids downloaded Google Earth. They started traveling to places and visualizing places they'd never seen before. And you could say, well, that's great, and it'll help them sort of maybe get an appreciation for science. A month later, we receive a video from these kids. And it's a homegrown video of a scene where the students had taken apart the VR hardware, which is not hard to do. It's a Vive.
Yep.
5 minutes. Put it on a bus with their teacher. Drove an hour further away from where they were to a village that has no electricity except for one small center where people use kerosene and lamps and candles for light. And they walked in the center and they set up the VR gear. And these 9th and 10th grade kids were teaching the adults how to wire a breadboard with an electric battery and a replaceable battery and a light bulb on an actual breadboard that they brought through a donation.
And for people who don't know what a breadboard is?
A small circuit board.
Okay, yep.
A tiny, inexpensive circuit board that are just for hobbyists. The parents were wiring it up with a light bulb and a renewable battery, rechargeable battery, and they were learning how to do this by watching the students who were inside one of our virtual reality experiences on electrical circuits. And the parents went in there and they were able to see how an actual light bulb and electrical circuit is formed and why it has to be wired in a certain way or it doesn't work. It was transformative because in 1 month, these kids who'd never had access to something like this before not only adopted it for themselves, but they were able to transfer that knowledge to the adults. And it's probably, I hope we have a lot more experiences like this in the future. But from a life-changing perspective for me and for our company on a personal level, to see the impact that something that we built, sort of saying, we're going to build this and we're going to see what happens, it was just incredible. So, and we've been fortunate to then do a project in Guatemala also this year with the Nature Conservancy that is just launching now, and I think it's going to be equally transformative. There's an area of Guatemala that is an arid zone, and due to climate change, the amount of water they receive every year has been dropping. It's now down to almost 3 months. And so what this virtual reality experience does is it helps farmers who've traditionally learned by hearing stories and being taught from their parents and grandparents. It codifies that information and it allows the farmer, without having to read Spanish, or really just to be able to follow the visual instructions, to learn how to exactly retrofit their houses, to put the right gutters on, to put rain barrel collection systems, and then to irrigate fields in a manner that would be most efficient in terms of the water usage. And one of the exciting things about this project that it's moving towards right now is the translation into 3 Mayan languages. Probably the first VR app on earth that will be translated into Mayan. And that, I think, will just be another one of those amazing stories. And we've already tested it with farmers. The adoption was instant. They loved it because the alternative for them was either large paper manuals that were too complicated to understand, or having the sort of ancestral knowledge.
Right. And now, again, it's something that someone can go in and learn and then pass on to other people. It's not contained to just virtual reality. These are actual things that people are learning and then changing the world around them because of something they did in VR.
Exactly.
It's that real life social impact, and that's wow.
I've been saying this a lot lately, and I sort of I do love this space. I've been in digital for a long time. We have been effectively trapped in a 2D world since the advent of digital. And we don't live in a 2D world.
Yeah, we live in a 3D world.
We live in a 3D world. We should probably live in a more than a 3D world. But let's just start with 3.
Let's start with 3.
Start with 3 or 4.
There might be like 7, might be infinity. We're not really sure. But there's at least 3.
At least 3 that we can sort of perceive.
Yeah.
And to be able to create experiences that leverage that technology to really immerse someone in the act of doing, it's that kinesthetic learning. It is that immersive learning. It's the simulations that have been paid for and cost a lot of money. The reason simulators exist is because it works. The percentages are much higher in terms of content retention when you actually do something physically and you hear it and you see it and you're doing all at the same time. And so it is exciting to see it being adopted.
So Guatemala is not the only country you've touched. So another big story for you has been what you did in Colombia. So let's go into that one.
So in Colombia, about a year or so ago, we try to do as much pro bono work as we can. It's just part of our DNA, and if we see the right opportunity, we'll do it. We were approached by the Columbia Human Rights Film Festival that was putting on their annual film festival. It's a big deal in Bogota, which is actually where our main office is located. An amazing team of people who are really just so smart and so talented and doing amazing things. And so we kind of asked them, do you guys want to take this project on? They don't have to pay us, but, and they said, absolutely, let's do it. And the area of focus, one of the areas of focus of the film festival was around landmines in Colombia that after the war, in the rural areas in particular, still kill thousands of people a year. They've reported, and this is just what's been reported, well over 1,100 children have died since the end of the war due to landmines. That's not to mention injuries. So it's a horrible problem. And people simply don't know. I mean, we certainly don't know in the United States, but even in Colombia, people were not aware of the full impact
of how many people it's affecting.
Of the scope. Just no sense, because that information oftentimes does not flow back through from the villages and the remote areas. And so we decided to use VR, knowing that it is an incredible empathy tool for the same reasons that it's a great education tool and a great corporate tool at the same time. And we created an experience where you, as the first-person protagonist, step out onto this beautiful hilltop village. It's just bucolic, and birds are chirping, and got butterflies flying around. And there's a small little home there, and a door opens, and a child, probably about 8 or 9 years old, comes out. And it's an avatar, so we're not trying to make it. We're trying to keep it something that people can go through. And the avatar starts engaging with you, starts speaking with you, and wants to kick a soccer ball back and forth with you. And so you kick the soccer ball back and forth with the avatar for a bit. And at one point, you accidentally kick the ball further out into the woods, and the child goes running after the ball. And I don't need to say what happens next. It's not graphic. It's intentionally not graphic. But when we put this on the headsets of 400 plus people at the film festival, we did not have a single person that came out of that without a tear in their eye, and some had to just take the headset off. It was too much to bear. And I think we got.
Yeah.
I think it worked. Like I think we got people to pay attention to that topic.
Right. It pushed them far enough out of the comfort zone where I got to do something about this.
Yeah, and there's a I mean I have my social perspectives, but I really do believe that there's so many problems we need to fix, right? And obviously VR and XR in general is not going to fix them all. But if it can draw attention and an absolute burned memory in someone's mind, then I really think that is an impact, because it's hard for you to live and not think about that experience that you had at some point.
It resonates with you.
It resonates. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like a one thing. Like it's going to come back and you're going to think about it, and it's not just something.
Well, you dissected the pig today, didn't you?
Yes.
Do you remember how to dissect a pig?
Yeah. So you got to make sure your safety goggles are on.
What's the first thing you have to do? Come on. First your lab coat, then
your lab coat, and then you put on your gloves, and then safety goggles, and then you have to shower the pig once you get it on, and then let's see, you have to measure the pig. And then you move it over, and I think I'm missing a step here, but you start like using the rubber band to
Greg.
like rubber band the.
Greg, you got this.
I will go down, and then there's a scalpel, and then you start cutting it.
But here's the beauty of this technology: if you did that 10 times,
right,
in a matter of,
you
would know it instantly.
Yeah,
and that's the power of these kinds of
Right
simulations.
now, I did it once, and I'm already at like 50%.
Exactly.
Which is awesome.
If you do it 3 or 4 more times, you'll never forget.
Yeah. And it's just that repetition and being able to do it in an environment that's safe. I'm not going to cut myself. I'm not going to feel weird about cutting open, cutting the flesh of a pig, right?
Exactly. No, there's an enormous amount of true business value, I'll just put in pure business terms.
Yep.
An enormous amount of pure business value in what XR will help education do.
Yep.
First and foremost, we know unequivocally that we can raise performance using these experiences. If they're designed right, if they're targeting the right topics, and if they're done in a way that keeps students engaged so that they actually continue to do it, there's no doubt it's been shown and proven that it will raise test scores, it'll raise retention, it'll raise performance.
And full circle, it's having that multi-user experience in there, where you have the teacher and you have the students in the virtual environment together, learning from each other.
Exactly. Yeah, that is an amazing thing as well to see, and to see teachers. We haven't fully deployed that portion of the platform yet. We're still in dev and test, but once it's fully deployed, it really will be something that has the potential to transform learning, because if a student is homesick, they can now still participate in a lab. If the space is not available, the teacher can still take the students in and perform a lab. The connections to the learning management systems will be there. The teacher management tools and classroom management tools will be there. We're not the first to think of this or do this, but I think it's almost going to be a de facto when we talk about education and VR in particular, or extended reality when we talk about Magic Leap and the future of what that will bring. The idea of doing it with someone else who's not there with you, but who's there to provide mentorship, a guide, answers, and to really prompt you to learn.
Right. To make you want to come in and learn, right? We're circling back to that curiosity of I want to, or like there's a part of it that resonates with them, and so they can go in and experience that and play around with it to then understand it.
Exactly.
Rather than just you struggle with trying to abstract it, or because it's hard to take something that's in a 2D format and then contextualize it in our 3D world, and we've touched on that quite a bit, and I think it's just we keep coming back to it.
There's an interesting thing that I've noticed happens, and I just really say this from personal experience. There's an interesting thing that happens when you step into virtual reality and you're not yourself anymore. You're still you, but when you see yourself as an avatar in VR, there's a slight perception change. There's a slight element of not being as sort of self-conscious.
Yeah, so it's the concept of the other, because it is me, because it reacts to me, but I know it's not physically me.
Exactly. And as you see the other characters that are with you, it's not physically them either, but you recognize them. You know that that's your friend over there, whether he's a robot or an avatar or anything, right? It's your friend's voice. It's your friend's thoughts and movement.
Yeah, I love how mannerisms translate. Like if you can put the same avatar and put them in line and then have each of them start like moving or nodding their head or laughing, you'll be able to pick out your friend.
I've never done that. That's amazing.
Because of the way, like, either the way they move their arms or hands, or
absolutely,
there are some mannerisms that translate very well in VR, and even with the basic avatars that we have now.
So I'm gonna tell you one more story that was really fun that we did this year. It was a project that it was really a skunkworks project. We just said, let's just try this. And we had 6 weeks to deliver it. So it was a crazy, ridiculous timeline. But the team was able to pull it off, and it was amazing. One of our teachers at a private school in Virginia that has the platform told us on a call that the science teachers were using the platform and really enjoyed it. But the groups that really were like adamant about VR were the arts teachers and the English teachers and the history teachers, particularly because of Google Expeditions and Google VR. But one thing that she noticed, because our experiences tend to be very interactive, et cetera, and very immersive, she said, I wish there was something that would be great for the arts that would really let the students work together and do something together. And so we literally took that as a challenge. And in 6 weeks, we rebuilt the Globe Theater, Shakespeare's Globe Theater. We developed the avatars to play Romeo and Juliet and William Shakespeare. We launched in front of 200 people at the Adrian Arts Center in Miami, who were all the heads of the arts community in Miami. So we took a huge risk. We had 5 audience members come in on Oculus Go's. They were in the pit of the theater. If you're familiar with the Globe Theater, the cheap seats were actually the ones by the stage, because it has a hole in the roof.
I haven't been there, but of course I've seen like lots of drawings and renderings, and I guess I've been there in VR.
You've been there in VR? Well, I'd love for you to try and try this one.
Yeah.
But this is really to your point that you were saying earlier about mannerism and how we actually translate ourselves into the avatar world. And so the audience came in as avatars. We, as the actors, and I got to play William Shakespeare, which is amazing, would step on stage. We are now dressed in costume, and we do not look like ourselves. We have a mirror so we can see what we look like and what our gestures and movement looks like. And we have our script so that we don't actually have to know the entire line of what we're saying. It's there for us. Audience can't see that. And then, long story short, I do the intro, and then Romeo and Juliet appear on the balcony scene, and they perform their exchange, Act 2, Scene 2. And it was amazing because the audience felt like they were there. And we had people tell us, were those real people?
Wow.
And we're like, yes and no. Behind that black curtain are 2 professionally trained actors, great friends, who are Romeo and Juliet, but on stage in your world, they're both human and not human. And
yeah,
we're reaching that point. Like, I feel like it's gonna accelerate at one point so fast that it's just gonna be like sitting in a Tesla and just flooring on insane mode or whatever they call it. Yeah. Right? Your neck's just gonna snap back. We know it's coming, and Magic Leap and others are probably gonna drive us into what this concept of the Magic Verse, and it's going to be an incredible journey. It's going to be so. One thing that we think about when we envision this transformation, especially in the case of education, right, is that we can bring all the technology on Earth to bear as a development community, as the amazing minds behind all these technology companies that are producing all this content. But if we don't create change at the institutional level, if we don't create adoption, if we don't enable people to really learn these technologies and get comfortable with these technologies and learn to use them, they're really not complicated to use. In fact, if you can use a computer and PowerPoint, this is far simpler.
A lot less buttons to press.
There's a lot less buttons to press, and it's a lot more intuitive. No offense to Microsoft or PowerPoint. But it is an easy step once you do it once, twice, 3 times. Navigating around the space is easy once you learn how to do it. Picking up things, clicking, opening, closing.
We live in a world that mirrors that, right? The things we do every day. So it's like, what is there to learn? Other than like, oh, this is how I grab. I pull my finger to pull the trigger to close my hand, and you see your virtual hand close, and it feels like it because you naturally, like, you're not just like pulling your finger. You actually do try and grab it, and you'll close your fist, even though all you're doing is pulling that trigger because you're physically trying to grab it.
I will quote you, and I will use that quote in future presentations because that is exactly right. But to the point though, we do have to think about, and it's not just Xennial. We're a smaller business and we're focusing, but we do think about, and we want teachers to be comfortable and trained. And I think it's going to take work to expose people to these technologies and to retrain them.
So if teachers or questions do have schools, how can they reach out to Xennial Digital?
Yeah, they can just find us on our website, xennialdigital.com, XENNIAL digital.com.
And we'll add it in the show notes, so they don't have to worry if you don't have to spell it out.
No, they can. They're happy to talk to anybody that's interested in this topic. This is something that we are really passionate about beyond, building what we think will be a successful.
And is there anything else you want people to know? For
final
so
words? If you're in Miami in June, come to the Miami VR Expo. It's the second year in a row. Our good friends are setting it up. I'll be speaking about XR in education and showing these actual examples that we talked about today, and hopefully even more. So if you can make it to that event, I think it could be a lot of fun.
All right, this has been another episode of the Virtuality Podcast. Want to thank Lorenzo, and we'll see you in this reality
or the next.
Thank you so much for listening. We would like to keep sharing more about VR and AR with you, so please consider a few dollars to our Patreon, linked in the show notes. The Virtuality Podcast is produced by Jason Parks and music by Rachel Dazinski. This podcast is in collaboration with Boston VR and Boston AR. Monthly meetups and events can be found on meetup.com. You can also follow us on Twitter @VirtualityCast and learn more at our website, virtuality.show.